Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. There have now been explicit threats by Russia to begin a nuclear conflict. Like, they're literally listing targets and dealing with the logistics. We will bomb this part and then we will bomb this part. And like, you're watching it and you're thinking, well, I'm not American. I'm making this show. Like, I mean, I don't mean to be mean because I know you are American. I'm not American. I'll be okay. And then like the news anchor goes on to say, well, of course, Great Britain will be submerged underwater. You won't believe this. It's becoming astonishingly real because we ain't got long, because Russia ain't playing. They're saying that they're going to bomb America, they're going to bomb France, and they're going to bomb the UK. And they seem pretty serious. As always with Russia, it seems heavy, you know, the way they do stuff. Here's a significant piece of news for those of you that want to carry on being alive and not be blasted into ashes in an apocalyptic event. Russia are seriously considering destroying the world because they're sick and tired of the NATO-US imperialist threat. Here they are saying that plainly and clearly, and here it is in their own language.
Если страны НАТО введут свои войска на Украину для того, чтобы нанести России стратегическое поражение, то тогда и наступит тот самый момент, о котором Путин как-то сказал: «Зачем нам мир, если в нем не будет России?» Тогда уж от нас полетит все и везде. И сарматы, и ярсы, и авангарды. Уже в прицелах американские центры принятия решений и пусковые установки на суше и на море.
I find that phrase rather chilling. First they list the brand names of some of their artillery, and then the news anchor explicitly says certain American sites are already in our crosshairs. At which point I start to think, well, at the moment, I don't live in the United States of America, which is doubtless the epicenter of imperial power. Many of you will believe it's the greatest country in the world yet. Certainly the Democratic experiment or the Republican experiment, you know I don't care too much for those taxonomies, but the spirit of independence, the spirit of revolution, the spirit of independent freedom thrives there still, even though the Biden administration is trying to allay and subdue that under a fog of propaganda. Let's have a look at the continuing and escalating threat from Russian media.
Францию, как ядерную державу, придется мгновенно разоружить.
France, you're out of the picture, you're going down.
Британские острова просто уйдут под воду.
The British Isles will simply go underwater. Check map. Wait a minute, I live in the British Isles. What terrifies me about this is at the advent of this terrifying conflict and this escalation of hostilities, I'm pretty far from an expert on geopolitical and military matters, said, hey, you don't treat Russia the same way as you would treat one of the Middle Eastern nations that there have been military-industrial complex wars in the last 20 years because, you know, Russia are a military superpower with a long, successful military history. If we continue to threaten them and engage them in some purgatorial Afghanistan-style nightmare, using Ukraine as a vassal state to drain the resources of Russia in order to establish a unipolar power on behalf of the United States, but more specifically their globalist, corporatist interests that have clear alliances with NGOs and four-letter nightmares like the WHO and NATO, you'll ultimately arrive at a point where Putin will say there will be a nuclear war. Now, remember when Biden some years ago was saying, we can't do that, there'll be Third World War for Christ's sake. He was acknowledging it himself. It was clear in the rhetoric. Now, you know too that when the Nord Stream pipeline happened and you went, Russia aren't going to blow up that pipeline. That's economically significant. Their ability to convey shale gas to Germany is pivotal and fundamental to their entire economy. What's more likely is that Navy SEALs or maybe some deep state Ukrainian or other NATO nation, yet to be, NATO nation will have enacted this crime. And remember, the Nord Stream pipeline insurers won't pay out on that. Sorry. We don't cover you for sabotage acts conducted by Jocko Willink. I'm not saying Jocko Willink did it. I merely remember Jocko Willink because when that was going down, Jocko Willink came on our show. I said, Jocko, could the Navy SEALs have done this? And sure. Like, sort of like the Navy SEALs could have done it while sort of snacking. They could have done that. So what is most astonishing about the ongoing escalation of hostilities between NATO nations, Ukraine and Russia is that you and me, people that haven't had the privilege of a Harvard education, people that don't have access to Pentagon files, people that aren't on the inside of the deep state military industrial complex machine would say, if you keep provoking Russia, won't that lead to a nuclear war? Well, guess what? It looks like it actually might, unless there is an intervention. Now, doesn't it astonish you, trouble you even, that you, as a subject or citizen or member of whatever nation you're watching this from, have literally no say? You're funding this escalation. You're funding the CIA bases in Ukraine. You're funding the $95 billion aid package that enables Ukraine to continue what will ultimately, I would assume, be a futile fight, either futile on the basis that Russia will ultimately win a conflict, if indeed it is between Ukraine and Russia, or if it continues to be supported by proxy nations like the United Kingdom and the United States, it will escalate to the point of nuclear war. So wouldn't it have been a lot better? Tell me how. Tell me what I'm missing here. Wouldn't it have been a lot better if the deal between Putin and Zelensky that was available a couple of years ago, before 600,000 Ukrainian lives were lost, before billions of dollars were spent, before numerous disasters, numerous cities, endless debris were incurred, that a diplomatic solution was on the table? No wonder they went into a meltdown and panic attack when Tucker Carlson spoke to Putin and we got to hear the information straight from the horse's mouth. We're not naive to think that there's no such thing as Russian propaganda. Of course there's such a thing as Russian propaganda. There's probably even such a thing as Russian agents. Lord alone knows there are CIA carve-outs that accuse me of being funded by Russia. They've made that accusation. They've made that content. They've funded Ukrainian media, specifically Ukrainian Vox, to make the exact allegation. You can check that out for yourself. But what isn't propaganda is that Russia are a military superpower. If you do not allow them to have their own trajectory, their own agenda, whether you agree with it or not, you are ultimately provoking a power that can wreak havoc. This is not Iraq. This is not Afghanistan. This is not one of those rollover nations that the military-industrial complex can keep the checks coming in by provoking a nation that can't respond on their own terms. In your nation since the Vietnam War, this whole modality, this economic modality of the economy of war has been failing. Even those that have pointed out that this is the economic model under which the United States succeeds or flourishes, and I don't mean American people. I'm talking about Julian Assange, of course, who says the purpose of Afghanistan was not to end the conflict, it was to sustain the conflict. That way you can keep funding the war, using public money, transferring it into private hands, keeping the whole racket going. Or who was it? Which one of your presidents was it that said simply, war is a racket? Now, Russia are capable of propaganda. There's no question of that. All nations are capable of propaganda, misleading or framed information, narrativization, call it what you will. But do you want to take that chance? And the very next thing this anchor says, after saying the British Isles will be submerged underwater, is, this is not propaganda.
Технологии для этого имеются. И мы о них как-то рассказывали. Но лучше до такого не доводить. И это не пропаганда.